This is the release. You can see that, well, first off, I'll talk about each thing in detail, but this is the release. It is small and mighty. That's the thing to keep in mind. As I mentioned, I have things planned all year, but the things that I have planned, I would rather launch them when they're actually available and ready. So we're just going to take this step by step. The first thing, of course, we're just going to talk about this because many of you have been waiting a long time for these. And as we said, when we release 4 new colors in Distress, then the mini kit will follow. Many were expecting it to follow immediately. I actually think it's pretty quick, all things considered, because Kitsch Flamingo was just launched this month, and to have a mini kit in the same month, well, hey, shout out to Ranger for that. So yes, the new colors of Distress are now available in a mini kit. So we have Speckled Egg and Crackling Campfire, Rustic Wilderness, and Kitsch Flamingo in mini Distress inks. No, for those asking, Oxides do not come in a mini. They don't, and there's no immediate plan in the future. The formula is just not designed for this size ink pad. But hey, for those that love the collection of mini inks, they are here, and I'll go through them a little bit more in detail. I'm also going to talk about the new mini domed ink blending foam and the Distress Brayers, because you might just be wondering, like, why do we have all this? Why do we need this? Well, each thing, there is a purpose, I assure you. So first we're going to talk about the minis, all right? Let's talk about these mini inks. Now with the minis, keep in mind, I love them just, of course, for portability. I like the fact that if I'm gonna do small stamping, maybe you're stamping in a planner or you're just doing tiny stamps, I like the minis. But ultimately, if your creativity has gone more into the mixed media realm, card making, where you're using a lot of ink for backgrounds, then you really want the regulation size ink pads. And the minis you just save for the mini things. Now, if you are a collector of the minis, okay, and you have them in the storage tin, I will tell you now that that means that by adding these 4, we went from having this perfect set to starting a new tin. And that's good too, because starting a new tin means that hopefully Ranger will have the pressure to fill the new tin with 8 new colors that we will hopefully eventually launch to fill this. But let's just talk about kind of where everything goes in place. I like to have my minis just pretty much in color order. So I've got Kitsch Flamingo just tucked right in there between Spun Sugar and Worn Lipstick. I have Crackling Campfire that follows Ripe Persimmon between that and Rusty Hinge. But again, you can sort yours any which way that you want. This is just the way I like to have them. Rustic Wilderness kind of comes just before Forest Moss. It's kind of one of those deeper greens. And then we have Speckled Egg that kind of kicks off the blues, just follows the teal, and I have it in before Ice Spruce. So yes, if you have the minis, that means a new mini tin. Many of you have them in like a cool fancy drawer or storage, but there you go. For those that have been waiting for the minis, the wait is over, okay? So let's go through and talk about some of the other new things. And I'll kind of keep things off to the side before I even get into the demo. Let's talk about this. We're going to take a little trip down memory lane to talk about the mini domed ink blending foam. And it's fun because Mario and I actually did this last night. We were talking, and it's a little bit mind-boggling when you think about it. All right. So we'll talk about the evolution of Distress. I'm going to go there, Mario. I didn't know. It was a lot of fun. All right, so it's a little story time. So back in 2004, I launched this product line with Ranger, a little product line called Distress Ink. And at the time, and this is completely honest, this was a product that Ranger was not really thrilled about. In fact, it wasn't even anything that they thought would ever go anywhere. The Distress Ink line contained 6 colors. 5 of them happened to be different shades of brown, and there was black soot. And because it was just an ink pad of brown and black, they thought that no card maker at the time would even be interested in such a thing. Well, of course, fast forward from 2004 to its launch to 17 years later, we're still using Distress, and Distress is really kind of launched into many different categories, different product areas, but it really remains true that Distress ink, well, it's its own thing, and there's nothing else like the original Distress ink. That's the way I feel, and that's the way I will always feel. But when I started using this, I was doing different things with Distress ink. I was crumpling paper and rubbing it on the wrinkled paper and spraying it with water and ironing it flat and stamping with it and doing all sorts of vintage related things. And one of the things that I did with this ink was inking the edges of things to make them look old. That was the whole point of Distress ink. We even kept the original tagline. If you see that on the ink pads, we didn't carry this through to anything else, but for the sake of nostalgia, even on the new colors on the large ink pads, it still says, create an aged look on papers, fibers, photos, and more. Because back in the day, we were inking fibers, we were hand tinting photos. It was the thing to do with Distress. But of course, with this ink, I wanted the ability to blend it, to ink the edges. And I was never a fan of cosmetic sponges for ink because a cosmetic sponge would absorb too much of the ink, and I just felt that it was wasting the color. So Ranger had a product, and they still probably have the product, I'm actually not sure because I haven't used it in so many years, called Cut and Dry Foam. And it was this foam that was sold in a sheet, and it's gray on one side, white on the other, and it was designed to create ink pads. But this foam allowed me to ink the edges of things. And you can see here, this is an old Design Originals book, oh my gosh, circa 2005. All right, so now a year later after Distress, I started using these as what I refer to as ink applicators. It was taking that cut and dry foam, cutting it up, and using it to ink the edges of things.
You know how many of those I cut?
Yeah, I cut a lot of them. It's a lot of squares. We would cut them by hand. And using them, of course, with the original Distress ink. You didn't see a big palette here. And this was a book that I was just talking about how you would distress different things. And it's interesting to kind of see this time capsule because there's a lot of like current ideology product that has made its way that was inspired so many years back, even doing beeswax and ruler books and tags. All right. Oh, there you go. You can see the ironing of the paper. But a year later, after this book, and I was doing all the inking with the foam, I got the idea of like, well, hey, what if I took that foam that I was cutting and I stuck it onto the ink tool? Because remember, alcohol inks came out the same year as Distress, just later on that year. And so we had this ink tool, this guy, if you remember it. Yeah, remember this one, this rectangular one? So I was taking off this hook tape, ripping it off, and I was cutting, Mario went from cutting these into squares into rectangles. And the rectangles, we just went in and used double stick tape and stuck it onto the bottom of this to make an ink applicator tool. So instead of holding it, I'm like, it would be really great if I could kind of blend this out. And I love this white foam. There's something about the way that foam is designed, because it is an actual ink foam, that I loved for blending.
It is
all right?
still available.
Oh, great. It is still available. And you can see just really a lot of the old products. I mean, a lot of you see these old punches and Distress embossing powder. And anyway, so this was book number 2. This came out a year later. This was in 2006. And you can see I went into a little scrapbooking and mini books and that sort of thing. Anyway, it's not about these books. It was really about the evolution of this tool. All right. And that was really what kind of started the whole ink blending thing. Was there weren't tools now. I mean, I understand now in the industry, there's so many different tools, but there weren't tools back then. So in 2007, so a year after I was ripping these off and sticking it on, Ranger figured out a way to come up with this foam that had a fabric backing that would attach itself to this loop tape. And we started doing ink blending tools in 2007, guys. Like, that's just
2007.
It's crazy to think.
How long have you been doing
It's just
this?
crazy. It's just crazy to think back, and you're like, okay, so now we're like what, like 14 years we've been doing ink blending. All right, and we've been using this, like the rectangular one. That was the way. For those of you that have been card making for years, like that was the way. We just did this. Okay, now we're going to fast forward. So again, in 2004, we launched the original Distress. Then you fast forward 10 years later in 2014, we launched these. So 10 years different. So 2014 are when the minis came out. And when the minis came out, this was no longer practical for me. I was saying to Ranger, like, how I get it on this one. You can see that it worked perfect for the size, but it's not going to work for this size ink pad. And that is when we launched the mini ink blending tool. This little circle is just a smaller version. It was the same wood handle, but instead of that rectangle, we just turned it into a circle because that's what fit this ink pad better. We also found that by rounding the edges, it made for an easier blend, right? There's people that have, just think back in the day when we only had straight edges that we were ink blending and we made it work. But then we went in for the rounds, and of course those little round foams were designed to fit the mini cubes. These came out the same show, same year. It was always designed that you could take that little mini foam and you can tuck it underneath that mini ink pad. Hard to believe that it took 10 years from this to this, and also hard to believe that this tool has been in the market since 2014. All right, so since then, we've been working with this round foam, and it's great. And I always believe, from someone that's been in the industry for many years, I think there is room for everyone. I always believe that. I think that it's great that people have ideas. I think that it's great that people are inspired by other ideas and do a different spin off of that. We see that now there are so many different tools to blend. We see a lot of ink blending tools that are called ink blending tools. Some have a different dynamic to them. Some are made out of plastic. Some have handles. Some are actually, well, they look just like this, but they're not Rangers. So there's a lot of different versions of a blending tool, right? Now there's even blending brushes. We've gone in from, the cosmetic industry, where we've been inspired by the softness of those brushes, and we've seen those come into our industry. We've seen different, like the distress brush that is really inspired by a stencil brush. And my point being is, there's never going to be the perfect tool. The perfect tool is what is perfect to you as the maker. You have to use what works best. But I will say that in seeing this round tool, we started seeing a lot of foam dabbers that people were using. They were using it with their fingers. Some of them have handheld dabbers. So the domed foam dabber has been around for a long time. And although we saw domed foam, there's actually a few companies that actually had domed foam that fit a blending tool. I just didn't want to rush out and do it because I love this foam. And so I said to Ranger, it'd be great to do domed, because let's face it, guys, when dome foam started hitting the market, so many people said, oh, do you have dome foam? Do you have dome foam? And it was, well, no, because I wanted a domed version of this foam. For those that have used ink blending foam, you know the softness, you know how this absorbs color. And that's why, to me, it was worth getting it perfect. Well, it took us a while. It took us actually a couple of years, but we did it. We have it. And so the domed foam, it fits the tool. You'll see that it has the same fabric on the back. It does have a really nice foam cushion. You can see that solid foam cushion. And then it has this domed, very, very soft foam. It is the same foam that this is made out of, but it is in a dome feature. And the nice thing about dome foam, some people love it because when it's there for blending. It's great for blending. I'll be honest, when it comes to backgrounds, I'm still this guy. Maybe it's just because I'm old school, but I like this. But I do love the dome foam for other things like stenciling and things like that. And I'll demo this just to show you the difference. It is really great if you're new to inking, or if you're still blend challenged, where you try to blend and you just can't get it because you're a little heavy handed. Having that dome thing, it made a round thing and just made it just better. So taking the kind of what we've learned and just bringing it out into the industry. I think that's what we all learn as makers. We learn by doing, and when we see what's going on out there, that is the beauty of adapting. So I'm excited to have dome foam now as part of the Ranger line for your ink blending tools. Now we're going to keep moving on to tools. We're just going, it is. I told you, Mario, it's going to be like, look at that little picture right there. The evolution of distress and a blending tool. Yeah, circa 2007.
So amazing how
It's
far and how long. And
it's just wild how long we've been doing this. Yeah, it is. All right.
it's been a long time.
So we're going to talk about the next new release, and this one I'm really excited about. And you might be looking at this going, seriously, Tim, a Brayer? Okay, well, if you know anything about how I like to work as a maker, it's just the fact that the right tool makes all the difference. And I am not saying in any way that I invented a Brayer. And I'm not saying in any way that this is the best Brayer on the planet. I will say that this is the best Brayer for me, for this product line. And I'm going to demonstrate why I wanted to do Brayers, all right? So before I get into the demo, let's just talk about the look of these. I wanted these Brayers to have a very cool, sophisticated look. I've always loved the design of the Ranger Brayer. I like the fact that it's very lightweight. I like the fact that it has little feet that it stands on. I like that I can hang this up. And I also like the ability to clean it. Makes it really easy. But to be honest, not a fan of this Brayer. And I've talked about that before in lives. I just don't like that it's a hard rubber Brayer. So when I went to Ranger and said, I want to work on a Brayer, I think it did take us probably close, believe it or not, it took us over 2 years to create this Brayer just because I wanted the right material around this Brayer. But then I wanted to make it look cool like everything else. So now I'm just going to bring it out just to show, because now we're going to get into the demo here on this. So I'll bring in the media mat. And one of the things, of course, for me, when I was designing this, I wanted this to look, well, like everything else I have. And so when you get into it, and this may not matter to you, it matters to me, because as a maker, well, I want everything to match. And if you notice, you'll see like quite the little trend happening here, right? I used to have red scissors. Well, then I went to black handled scissors. And then I used to have red tools with tonic. And then I went into black tools and paper distresser. And then with Sizzix, we had the different color tools. And now we have, of course, the black tools and the tweezers and the shaping kits. And anything that I've done, you'll see that I've gone this direction. Even down to paper cutters, black and gray, even down to die cut machine, black and gray. So one of the things, of course, with this is I wanted all the tools to match. And I think that for my line of tools, well, yes, having everything matchy-matchy was really important. And that's why I wanted to do it. But I also wanted it to just stand out on its own. But I'll admit, this is a very sleek looking tool, guys. Very, very sleek. I'll show them to you here. They just look good, right? They have black handles, black roller, black feet, and wait till you see how they work, all right? So that was the whole reason why I wanted to do one thing. There's definitely a method to my madness. Always, always, all right? So I'm gonna just throw all these in here. It was fun to get these out too, I'm not gonna lie. Like seeing everything. And some people still love the red handle scissors because they can find them easier, and that's good. Tonic doesn't make them red anymore, but that was good. So here we go with the Brayers, and I'm also going to demo the domed foam, right? So these tools are really designed for art mediums, for color mediums. It really just depends on what it is that you want to create with it. I'll start with blending first, and then we'll get into the Brayers, and we'll do kind of a side-by-side. When it comes to blending, and I'm still gonna blend with this one because you need to kind of see the difference so you understand. I've done many, many demos through the years on ink blending. Paper always makes a big difference, whether it's watercolor paper, whether it is mixed media heavy stock, like a tag or a journal. Maybe you're just going to do, I'm gonna grab some of this from the back. There we go. We'll take some craft heavy stock, okay? Different papers are gonna give you different play time, right? So I'll just show you side by side. And both of these are fresh foam because I think it's only right to just start with fresh. I'll do a little vintage photo. So let me just grab a little shelf liner there so the pad doesn't go squeaking across. All right, I'm gonna work from the glass. I like to work from the glass when I do blending versus the craft mat because it doesn't have any drag. If I'm working on the glass, it's just really smooth. And when I hold the ink tool, that's why it has that little dip in there, right? It's not a solid handle because you really shouldn't be holding the ink tool like this, right? Because then your hand is just so rigid. It's just supposed to be very relaxed where it just fits in there. It's got that little divot. When I'm ink blending, I always like to hold the tool at a slight angle, not a harsh angle, right? Just slightly off the edge. And working from the glass, you just start with small circular motions, and then you just increase the size of the circles. Now, by doing that, you're pulling ink from the glass onto your paper. And the bigger the circles go, the more you blend. Now, this is with the flat blending tool, and some people might look at that and go, I'd never blend like that ever. And this is on watercolor paper, so there is no coating on here, right? So it's not like, oh, okay, it's not gonna be, you know, one of those things where you're looking at that saying, okay, well, wait a minute, if I have this, I'm not getting the right edge. Well, what you're gonna keep in mind is that you're always gonna get that darker edge from where you start. There we go. And so if you start with small circles, that's where your freshest ink is gonna go. And as you increase your circles, it's going to go lighter. And that, of course, is with the flat. Now we're gonna flip this over and we're gonna go domed. Now, if you have a coated paper is going to work a little different. So first thing I want to point out on the domed foam, that was completely clean, and you saw that I just did a couple of swipes, and look at how much ink this foam holds. That's what I love about doing this foam, because it's going to hold ink the same way this one does, where it's going to give me enough color that I can work, again, from the edge, really light, go over here, and just start pulling this color. Now, it's going to blend a little different. And I'll show you what I mean by that, okay? The domed foam is going to give you more of a, I'm gonna say like a consistent blend, if you will, right? So you can see that by having that dome, I'm able to make much wider, larger circles quicker. Okay, take that ink. But you'll also notice that instead of going from this dark to light, which is what the flat one does, the domed allows for much more of a seamless blend, right? Now, if you want to go, you can still focus around the edges, even with the domed, right? But it's not going to have such a flat surface to catch on it, and you can, of course, still go in larger circles just to blend that out. So that's the nice thing about this particular foam. The other thing you have to keep in mind with any kind of foam is how you use it, right? I have people that will get some foam, and I'm just going to do it. I'm going to chew this up just for the sake of the video, because you need to see that too. There's people that will take a foam, whether it's domed or flat, and they're going to take the edge of their paper, right? So this is a 300-pound heavy stocks, or no, it's not 300 pound. Oh my gosh, could you imagine if it was 300 pound? 130 pound. It's 130 pound. But imagine if you were working on this or chipboard or wood, because you as a maker will know, maybe you're doing junk journals. If you take any kind of foam and you're doing this motion, you're pretty much slicing into that foam, right? It's still just foam. Or if you're doing this a lot, right? You're pretty much just starting to shear off the surface, or you go into corners a lot, okay? So one thing that's just a good suggestion is if you do a lot of books where you're going to be doing the edges of covers and pages, have one tool dedicated for that aggressive blending, right? Because that's the one where your foam is going to start to deteriorate quicker, whether it's domed or whether it's flat, because you're really just using it in that motion. You can see it's not falling apart right now, but you can see that it starts to chew into that surface. And that's just important. If you do a lot of that, just kind of keep that tool for that purpose. This way you're not trashing all of your tools by doing that motion. Now, if you're going to be doing blending through a stencil, let me grab a stencil here just to show you what's really nice about this. I haven't chosen one yet, so I usually like to choose something ahead of time, but let's do something open. That's a good one. I like this stencil. You can see I use it quite a bit because it's opened a lot. So let's say you're going to do a stencil that has a lot of opening. Hold on, I've got to get it the right way so I can unlock it. There you go. Pull this off to the side. Oh, Mario, there we go. Can you grab this for me? I only have...
Yeah, sure.
Thanks. Thanks. I just need to... I can't even open that. Yeah, can you? Thank you. When you're working with a stencil and you have something that's going to be open, did you get it? Yeah. Hold on. My wire is super tight from holding on to that. Here we go. Okay. Thanks. Okay. All right, he'll get that. When you're working with a stencil that has an open area, one of the things to keep in mind is how you're going to apply the ink through it. And if you don't have that, I'll grab another one off this. I've got stencils. I just want to show.
Put some super glue on?
Well, sometimes I like to tighten them because there's nothing worse than having something fly open. Oh, here we go. I can use bubbles.
I got it.
Did you? See?
No.
It just knew. No, go for it. Did you get it? No, he didn't get it. Hold on. See, sometimes these wire rings, I just put them on too tight because I don't want to lose it. So I'll take this one. There we go. There we are.
Now I have it. Which one would you like? Take your choice.
I'll take both. I'll take both because I have them. They've waited long enough for it. All right. So when it comes to stenciling, let's just talk about when you go through a stencil. If you have an ink blending tool that's flat, right? Because I've talked before that when I do stenciling, I prefer to use a brush because a brush is what's going to get into those areas. So a flat foam, right? Even if you're going to go through a stencil, you're able to kind of go over the edge, but it's going to leave, I'll just show you, it's going to leave a pretty wide halo. Now, if you have something domed, it's very similar to a brush in the sense that because it has that height to it, it's just going to make it easier to go into that stencil and get closer to the edges. It's still not going to get as close as a brush though, I'll be honest. But if you're doing a lot of stenciling, I like the fact that, see how I can use this dome to actually push out because it's going to glide because of the top of that. I'm not applying a lot of pressure because I don't want it to, you don't want it to catch the stencil. But by doing this, it is allowing me just a different movement over a stencil that a flat foam doesn't allow. So that's another benefit when you're working with it, is that you can see a flat foam is going to give you a wide space. Domed is going to be closer to the stencil line. And of course, a brush is going to be even closer because the little bristles can get close to the edge. But you can see from the movement that a domed foam just allows a whole different ink thing. So, I mean, I'm telling you this because I don't ever want this to go away. I'm saying that because, I mean, I'm excited that we have domed foam, but I still love the flat for what I like to use it for. And I would use the domed for specific things. One, if I'm doing a lot of stenciling, then yes, I would go with this because this is way faster, way more efficient, and it allows, I think, more detail, and it allows for a nicer fade. If I'm going to do some ink blending, especially on things like craft paper, right? Craft paper is super porous. This is also really nice because I can be very, very light-handed with domed, and I can get more color into my paper, and then I can just go around the edges, where if I was using flat, I wouldn't really be able to go in here without getting those circles. See the difference? So that to me is, there's a benefit. I mean, that's what I was trying to say at the very beginning of this, and you'll see even with the Brayers. The right tool makes all the difference, and it's going to be up to you as the maker to decide which one you like. You know, you might just totally go to the dome side, and that's where you are, and you might just remain kind of true to this flat one, or you might do a little bit of both.
So I've answered the question on my own.
I cannot wait.
Neither are going away. I mean,
No, neither are going away.
Okay.
No, but as with anything new, you know, sometimes like a company, and I'm only saying this because maybe I put Ranger on the spot, but sometimes the company will be like, oh, that's where everybody wants to go, so they don't want this anymore. And it's like, no, there's room for both. It really just depends on how you use and what you use. So no, right now there's no plans of them going away.
I did answer that before.
Because if you think about it, here's another thing. The domed foam is only sold in a pack. So it doesn't come with handles, which means that this is going to remain hopefully the staple, and then the dome foam are just more for, you know, people that want a little softer blend, or people that want it specifically for stenciling. And like with the other foam, just so you guys remember, so this, the fact that it has this little bit of like thicker foam on the bottom, remember if you grab your Velcro, you can pop this off, but these are washable, all right? So remember that if you wanted to, you can wash this with soap and water and clean it out and let it dry if you want to. I think dome foam with oxides, man, that's a dream. Let me grab that and I'll show you that real quick for those that love oxide like I do, because the dome foam is pretty magical. All right, so oxide. Ooh, let's grab a little crushed olive. Okay, I'm gonna clean this up. And yes, feel free to ask questions during this. I mean, it's a product launch. As you can see, that was a launch, but there's a lot to demo, especially when we get into the Brayer. But understanding the purpose of the dome foam,
So
I
just asked,
dig it.
why do you prefer dome for oxides?
It's just going to apply more colorant quicker. So oxide, because it is a fusion of dye and pigment, it has a lot more colorant that's going to go down, and the dome surface holds more of that colorant. So I'll show you when I just put that over the oxide. Okay, so when this goes onto the surface, let me just get another sheet of paper.
300 pound?
Yeah, 300-pound paper. Can you imagine? Wow. So going with oxide, you can see that it really gives a lot more colorant on the surface quicker, because that dome foam is allowing me, again, to even go in this motion and fade it out, right? If you try to do this with a flat ink blending tool, not happening. But then I can still go in and move some of that pigment out. So that's what I was saying. If you like to do quick backgrounds with oxide, and then I'm just going to fade that out. And I'm going to bring this all the way in. So I'm still working with that same application. Let me just if you get in a habit of like using another sheet of paper or paper towel or Post-it note instead of your fingers. Cool. All right, there's our blend. So see how we have the ability to just take that color all the way out just with that. So again, if you're an oxide user and you like to just do backgrounds, this is just really efficient because it holds so much of that colorant that allows you to go and create those ombre backgrounds. And well, yeah, it just goes on creamy dreamy, right? But we can still flip this over and just kind of counterbalance the other side if you wanted to. But see, it's interesting because if you haven't used this foam, you're going to be so used to circular motion, and by all means still use a circular motion, but this does give you a little bit more freedom to kind of treat it as if you were coloring with something. So I can just focus my color there. This, a flat foam, would never allow you to do that because otherwise you would always get circles. You're going to get those big marks. You know, it's a nice blend. It is creamy dreamy. I'll spritz a little water over that just because it's oxide, just to have fun with it. Maybe I'll even pick some of that off. Yeah, cool background, right? A couple of dips. Love crushed olive. But there you go. So my advice is, well, give it a whirl. Can lift oxide ink. Lift ink is for alcohol ink, but water would definitely do that. So pretty nice, right? Okay, let's move on to the Brayer. And if there's other questions on this, I'm just excited that Ranger finally has dome foam in the line. It was worth the wait. We were working on it, but just like I said, I wanted it to have the same properties and quality as our original blending foam that we've had, you know, since 2007. Just wanted it to be that nice foam that is designed specifically to smooth around ink. All right, cleaning off the media mat. Here we go. I agree. I love that color, crushed olive. I mean, stop it. Okay, moving right along. I'm going to grab these. So the Brayers. There are two Brayers. Now, I know Brayers come in all shapes and sizes. All shapes and sizes, okay? I chose these because of how I like to use a Brayer and what I use a Brayer on. So there again, depending on what you do in your making world and what kind of Brayers you prefer, you need to use what is going to work for your application. I like these two sizes. This one is 2¼ inches. It's like a little sports car. It's a smaller roller. It's great for small areas, tight spaces, but also small backgrounds. But sometimes I want something a little bit bigger. And so this one it's 3 5/16. I didn't choose that measurement. That's just kind of the standard that this factory does. It's a bit of an odd measurement, but it's just I call this like the medium Brayer. You'll see that the roller is a little bit bigger. This is good if I'm going to do an entire piece of like cardstock, right? If it's a whole cardstock piece, I can do that. All right. So here's what we've got when it comes to these Brayers. Now, usually when I'm working, I don't like to compare other products side by side. It's just something I don't get in the habit of doing. I've done it once with crayons because there were a lot of questions. And I think for this demo, I needed to do it as well because I own these. I have these. And if you've watched previous videos, you know that I've talked about this Brayer. And this is a speedball Brayer. It is a soft rubber Brayer. You can see that it's very squishy. It's not foam, it's rubber, but it's very squishy. Okay, and I like to use it because I didn't have this one. This is the Ranger Brayer. This is a hard Brayer. It's got no give at all. It's a hard rubber Brayer. This one, this is a soft rubber Brayer. You can see that it's got that give. You see that? It squishes in. In fact, the roller itself, like watch when I squish both sides. See how the whole roller moves, that rubber? Because I wanted it to be pliable, but I didn't want it to be this squishy. It's kind of like the story of Goldilocks and the Three Bears, right? You know, this one's too hard, this one's too soft, this one's just right. So I'm just going to give you a visual on the difference between these three. Now, these are exactly the same as far as density. It's just going to be size and roller. So I'll probably do the mini in a little bit, but I'm just going to show you the comparison of these three because those are the ones that I've used, all right? So for this demo or comparison, I'm just going to take a sheet of cardstock and I'll just talk about how the ink goes down, right? How it rolls out onto a surface. So let's take, well, what do I want to do, Mario? I think I'll do some green. Why not? I'll do that. Green seems to be the thing today, I guess, for me. All right, so I'm just going to start first with an ink pad. And whether this was an oxide ink or whatever. So I'm just going to pick up some color from the ink pad. Okay, this is on the softest Brayer. Roll that on, and you could roll this back and forth, but that's going to be its transfer. And you can see there's a lot of ink left on this because that soft rubber Brayer. I'm not sure exactly what medium this Brayer is designed for, but it wants to hold on to a lot of color. Now I'll take this one. Now when you use the Ranger Brayer, it's got these little kickstands, and you always want to make sure that the little feet are up. The reason they do it is because whenever you use a Brayer, even this one, there's always a place where you set it down so you're not setting the roller on your work surface for a couple of reasons. One, you don't want that to mark up whatever you're setting it on, and two, you don't want to create a flat divot in your brayer. That's why I love the fact that these can hang off of a hook so they don't sit in a drawer, because if they do for a long period of time, you could actually dent that surface. It would, I mean, in a soft rubber, it will eventually come out, but it's just really designed just to kind of hang up so it's not smashed, or set it on its feet. So now we're going to take the red one. I'll just call it the red one. And I'm just going to do the same thing, roll and lift, and we're going to just go across. Okay, and you're going to see like not much has happened compared to the soft one, okay, when it comes to ink. And then we're going to take this one, okay? Same thing. Now, I know it's a black brayer, and some people go, well, it's a black brayer, I can't really see it. Well, you might see it if it's got oxide or something else on it. And now we're going to go to this one, okay? So here you can see that this didn't transfer much, this didn't transfer any, and this transferred my ink. That's why I like this material, okay? We'll take it one step further. We're going to go to something fluid, okay? Let's just take a spray stain. Say we want to brayer that. So I'm going to take just a spray, and I've done this in demos before because I think rolling or brayering through a liquid is pretty cool. So I'm going to pick this up. Again, I'm going to roll through that liquid, coat the roller, and then I'm just going to go through that. And you can see that that provides, well, a lot of liquid. It's great, just comes off. So maybe a fluid ink is what that brayer is designed to do. I'm going to put more stain down. We'll take this one. I'm going to roll and lift. Okay. We can already see how that this one's just a little different in how it picks it up. Okay. Gives us little spots, little stripes. And we're going to take this one. Same thing. Roll and lift. And this is really just kind of coating. When you do this, you're just coating the brayer with just drips. Okay. And this one, to me, just right. So too much flood, a little sporadic. Maybe that's what you like, but this, just right. So that's really why I wanted to do this brayer out of this medium. And we're going to use it in other applications. I'm going to show you with paint and embossing folders and all that. But I think visually, it's important to understand whatever brayers you have, that a different density is going to put down your medium differently. And maybe you want to try this. Maybe you want to take whatever brayers you have. Maybe you have a foam or an acrylic or whatever. Just get yourself a piece. This is just index paper. Or you could use copy paper and try a dry medium to see how much is actually going on to the roller and coming off. And also try a wet medium, because you'll see that they just do something different. All right. So when it comes to putting things down, knowing that you have control over this, the fact that I can get it wet or dry, now I'll move on to another substrate. So now we're just going to take watercolor paper, and I'll go into this. And let's say I wanted something a little bit drippier, right? Instead of going into the puddle, I can go off to the side here, and you can see those little dots on there. And so by taking this paper, I can go across and I can create that same little striation, those little skips that I got with this brayer, right? By inking it less. So instead of loading it up, I can just work to the side. So I like the fact that I could get this look with this brayer, or I could roll it, get a nice amount of colorant on there. I could mist my paper, so I'm just going to take watercolor paper, just give it a little spray of water. And now because I have so much colorant, this is just going to allow me to really create that ombre background with stain, because I'm able to put down more color. And this, you can see I'm just holding this. The roller runs free, and it makes it super easy to create a watercolory background. So that to me is kind of the control about that. Someone's asking about paint. We'll get there. I said we're going to demo ink, paint, oxide, the whole deal. Okay, we got to start somewhere. So the ink is, to me, where it's at, whether it's an ink pad that you saw or a stain. So now we're going to talk about cleaning it up. So let me just clean this off. Just using a paper towel. Take some of this off. Take some of this off. Just dry this up. Okay. So when it comes to cleaning the brayers, you have some options. Some people just do a piece of scrap paper. You can do that. You could take a baby wipe and you can roll through this. So like this one, you really have to kind of grab around the edge to clean this up. Both of these brayers have this feature when it comes to cleaning, which is I can grab the roller, these wire handles, you simply pull it apart. See, there's no connection right there. So I just lift this up. I get to remove the roller, and that's going to allow me to just quickly clean both ends of this by just twisting it around and putting it right back in the holder. So when I'm using it with collage medium, maybe I'm going to use glue or paint, it's so much easier to clean that medium than rolling it onto scrap paper. But again, some mixed media artists love kind of the roll off of a brayer. So you do what works for you. Some people create whole new backgrounds just by cleaning off their brayer. It's excellent for gel printing. It transfers to a gel plate really, really nice, same medium, and we'll see, depending on time, I'll demo that. So now that I've done the comparison, now I'm just going to work with the brayer. We're going to get into different mediums, okay? And I've got both of these. Let's pick up an Oxide. So when it comes to working with Oxide, you can do Oxide on a lot of things. Let's go into a piece of craft here. And I'll pick this up. I think I'm going to just use this little sports car one. Okay, just going to roll and lift. Okay, nice, get nice coverage. You can see it has nice coverage around the whole brayer. If you want to fill the whole brayer, well, then you just work it across the sides. And it's always roll and lift. Okay, that's how we're going to coat a brayer. We can go in and just brayer this on if we want to smooth it out. You don't need to use a lot of pressure. You're just going to roll that medium off. Now this is craft stock, and I wanted to show craft because it's very, very porous. So it's what wants to grab that medium off the brayer the quickest. But a brayer is a nice way to blend the color out, really solid. Okay, I'll set that one down. Let's pick this one up. Now we'll go to mixed media heavy stock. Now this one, I just kind of roll across. And it's really important because if you just do this, you're only going to get ink on half of it. Maybe that's your thing. Some people do that little half mark. Where's my little shelf liner? There you go. Some people do that little half mark, and by doing the half mark, it gives you little squares. A lot of cool things you can do with a brayer.
What color are you using right now?
This one is Evergreen Bow.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's a neat color, especially on craft. It's really neat. But so now we're going to take on this tag. And I'm just going to go, because I want you to see how a brayer puts down ink. Because after just doing a blending tool, you might be like, well, hello, Captain Obvious. Why are you doing this when you could have just used a blending tool? Yeah, you could have. But the whole idea with a brayer is that you get these cool marks and striations in a background, depending on how you're braying this on. And you can see that I'm picking up different bits of color. So my first application was pretty smooth. Then because I'm going in different directions, I'm starting to lay down almost a patchwork, if you will, of color. Now anything you roll over is also going to pick up that mark. So if I like rolled over that little reinforcer, it's going to kind of put down a little circle on your background. But I love the look of this. It's just a cool background to put down ink. If you wanted this to be blended, you could go in with your Oxide. We'll pick this up. And we can start with a wet piece of paper, the same way we did the watercolor. And now when you go on there, you can see that this is just going to, the water's not going to hurt your ink pad at all. It's just going to go on different, okay? It's always going to have that ability to really start wicking out and blending. But you'll also notice that the paper, because you wet it, is going to start absorbing more color than on the surface. I'll just kind of do a side by side. Can you see the difference? See how much more intense this one is than this? So if you want more color to go in, wet your paper. I prefer to brayer over dry paper because I love almost that linen kind of look that you would get by applying a brayer, right? But the brayer is more than just putting down those colors. I definitely like the fact of going on that ink wet. That's probably one of my most favorite for a brayer is by brayering on stain. So let me just take this off, see, quickly clean it and put it back on. It just makes it easy, at least for me. Let me line that up, there we go. And again, if you don't want to do that, you can just, do this all the way around. But once you get in the habit of just cleaning off the brayers, just makes it super easy, especially with glue. I like to use this if you do large areas, say you're doing an art journal and you want a collage, it's a great way to roll out collage medium and things like that you could easily clean it up.
I think I'm seeing questions about the roller, is it available just as a replacement, or will be, or?
Right now, it only comes in as is. They're not replacement rollers. Maybe that's something in the future, because I know Ranger used to do replacement rollers for their red ones, but because this isn't designed to be carved or anything, I don't think they did replacement rollers, because quite honestly, they're not much cheaper than the entire thing with the handle. So
Okay.
I don't see that happening, because it's not like, oh, you need another one because you're going to carve this one out. It's pretty much, it is what it is.
Thanks.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so let's go back. I'm going to just do another kind of, take a little, there's a little Oxide spray, and I'm going to move it with a little bit of Kitsch Flamingo as well. Okay, take those two colors, and let's work on a little watercolor cardstock. Okay, and this one I'm just going to start dry, so I'm just going to pick up these colors. So see how I just kind of went lightly so you can still see the colors on there? Because if you keep working it, well, you'll mix it into a color, and maybe that's what you want, all right? But now I'm just going to go in and just kind of create this background, this kind of drag background, right? Now I'll go in, just going to mist that just to get a little bit of movement, and then I'm going to dry it. Okay. And I'm just going to dry this as a layer, because you can layer these with a brayer the same way you would layer other things. There we go. Okay. Excellent. So once we have that, we can go in and I'm going to just do another layer. So I'm going to pick this up and I'm going to go back over this, wet this out, and dry this. So you might be thinking, well, what's the purpose of this kind of background? It's all about texture. It's all about knowing that different tools are going to give you a different application of color, different application of texture. And you'll see that by drying this, it looked kind of all blended out at first, but because I dried the first layer and I dried the second layer, we're still getting that background with those striations of colors. It does look like melted crayon, you're right. But this is really a great background because we can still go in with our ink tools and you could go in and blend additional color if you didn't want the white space, or you could have started. But seeing the fact that you can get these different patterns with a brayer, that's the importance of understanding where this tool comes in, just for backgrounds. And that is, it can be a solid background if you just concentrate the brayer in one section. That's how we got that solid blend. It can be more of a patchwork, and that is by inking it and going in different directions. Or it can be this kind of linear striation by taking a liquid or wet. Even if you didn't have a spray, you could take your ink pads, wet this with water, and then roll through it. And if you went the opposite direction, you could even create kind of a crosshatch. You have to be careful because it fills in pretty quick. But those are just kind of some background options when it comes to a brayer. But now I want to talk about other things. I want to talk about textured paper, acrylic paint, embossing folders, because the purpose of a tool like a brayer, in addition to gel printing, is the fact that you can use it on other substrates, things that have texture. That's where a brayer, in my opinion, let me get a baby wipe. Oh, there we go. In my opinion, that is where a brayer is much more efficient than a blending tool. I love how quick that just cleans off. All right, perfect. Let me clean this ink off. Get a little dry paper towel. And off we go. It's always interesting in the lives. I mean, as I'm doing this, I'm kind of trying to multitask, but you know, I know that when we do demos, there's a lot of times that people just ask just a lot of questions. We do try to keep it a little focused on the task at hand. So sorry if I'm not getting to questions that aren't related to this, but I got a job to do, right? I got to demo this. I got to demo the brayer so you guys understand its purpose. Okay. So next we're going to talk about textured things. Right? Textured papers, textured substrates. And there's a couple of really cool textured surfaces. Let me grab these that I have with Ranger. One is called wood grain cardstock and one is called crack leather. Now I'm going to demo on these cardstocks. I'm also going to do an embossing folder, but just know that if you didn't have a textured paper, you could use something that you had used an embossing folder on. But the reason I want to demo on this is because, as you can see, the texture on this paper is very delicate. That is where a brayer is super important from a delicate aspect of a surface, okay? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna change these substrates from just being white into some very cool, very realistic backgrounds. Like, look at that wood grain. I mean, shut the front door. Look at that leather. Look at that leather. I mean, that's just white paper. All right, so we're going to see how we do that. Ready to go? All right, I'm going to set those off to the side. I don't know. I'll put them off to this side. I don't know what side I want to set them off to. Let's just take a piece of wood grain. I am trying to follow the chat. I do love it. Okay. I believe he means put glue, collage down, and run through it. Yes, you can do that. You can brayer on collage medium, like if you have book paper. You can pick up some glue, put it on your paper, put your paper down, and then if you had a clean brayer, you can use it to smooth it out. So you can apply glue or not with the rollers. You would just clean the glue off the same way I cleaned off the ink, which is a baby wipe while it's wet. If it's dry, you would want to use hand sanitizer if it dried on there. Okay. Yeah, a wood grain embossing folder would also work, and I'll show you an embossing folder in just a bit. So I have two plain pieces. This one is the cracked leather, and this is the wood grain. Smooth on the back, but a wonderful texture on the front. First, we're going to do some coloring. So I want to show you how we get there and do a little inking. So I will just get out my splat box just because I don't want to keep cleaning this. You could work on your media mat for this, but for the sake of the demo, I don't want to keep cleaning, so I'm going to just lay down a paper towel. I'm going to put both of those pieces in there. And the splat box, let's put it this way, it's just going to allow me to do my spray without a lot of mess in here. Okay, so we'll take a few things. I'm going to take some different inks. I've got ground espresso, ice spruce, spray stain, do a little pumice stone, and some gathered twigs. So for this, I'm just using spray stain. You could use oxide sprays if you want, but I just want to get down a nice saturation of color. So I'll start just with some light colors. Let's see, this one is pumice stone, so I'll do pumice stone over here on the leather one. I do always wipe the nozzles of the sprayers off just because I'm in the habit of doing that. This one is ice spruce. This is kind of a gray blue on the wood grain. And then for, let's see, I'll do a little gathered twigs, probably on both, right? Gathered twigs is a little warm. You could use a vintage photo for that. And then I'm going to use ground espresso, very dark. So you want to be okay with that, not too much, it will overpower everything. Then I'm just going to go back in some of the areas like on this one and just add a little bit more color in there. There we go, just to kind of fill in. So you can see the papers are pretty wet, but also very splotchy. I'll just do it so where the light kind of catches it. So you can see that when I use the colors, I kind of focus those colors in different areas. So it is a little bit more of a patchwork. I don't spray the whole thing with the same color because it would just, well, it would cover everything up, all right? So on my sprayers, I always have some sort of cloth. It's usually my Inky Binky or something that I'm just always in the habit of wiping off nozzles of sprayers. Some people don't do it, don't think they need to, and you do you. It's just what I like to do. All right, so next I'm going to dry these. Let me just take these out of the splat box. I'll get this out of my way, and we'll dry them, okay? So while I'm drying these, I'm also going to go in and I'm going to add a little bit of water. Not right away, because I want that color to really be saturated, but I also want the fact that it's just going to have a little bit more of an imperfect blend. So on my distress sprayer, instead of misting, you can hear it, I'm just slowly squeezing the trigger. That's what the sprayer is designed to do by slowly doing it. See how it just spit out those little water drops? That's what I'm going for. That's what I love about this sprayer. I have the ability to mist water, but more importantly, the ability to splatter water without like using your fingers to flick that on. So now I'm just going to go in and just doing it. All right. And it is important that we dry these before we move on. I already have some that were already done, and then I thought, well, I should show you kind of how I do the coloring on this. So as I'm drying this, you can see that it's got these little lines of sludge right there, this little ink. If I was doing a lot of backgrounds, I'd probably utilize that ink, but I'll just move that out of the way. Blot those up with a dry paper towel, just off the glass. Okay, so far so good. So I'm just gonna go in a little bit more water, just kind of drip it on in areas. Again, now you can see how the water is dripping out of that. It's very, very important. And you could dab it off. I don't want to, because if I dab it off, it's gonna reveal a white space. Not really what I'm going for. Julie, you have 3. Listen, I have many of these. I'll be honest. I do have, if I had a holster, I would wear it because having that sprayer is really, really important. And when you have it at the ready, it just makes your backgrounds, I think, a little bit more, I don't know, realistic, unique. Okay, so I'm taking that heat tool, I'm drying it. You can see that this allows me to be an inch away without burning anything. It's not blowing anything, so that's why I like the Ranger heat tool. Also, it's black, of course, so it's going to look beautiful. I use an embossing gun for embossing. I use a heat tool for everything else. So the only time I could you emboss with this? Yes, but I don't really like it. I just like to use one that's focused. But for everything else, for inks, for paints, for mixed media, for glue, the craft tool is where it's at. And it's always funny. I mean, I say it pretty much in anytime I talk about the tool. Mario's probably rolling his eyes going, oh boy. Is the fact that I don't understand why people are so conflicted in owning this and an embossing gun. When it comes to other tools, you have many paper cutters or different die cut machines, or, you know, we always have different variety of tools, but it's like, man, when it comes to embossing, I need one. Oh, I just don't think there is a perfect one. I think an embossing gun is great for embossing, and a craft tool is great for, well, everything else. All right? That's just my opinion. Just my opinion. Please don't judge. Okay, so here's our background. So this is cracked leather. Beautiful colors, right? A little pumice. You can see by using all those colors and then see those drips of water, that's what's creating that striation. If you didn't add those little drops of water, this is the second drop. The drips are the second drop. The first was creating the blend. I think it would just look a little too splotchy. And look at wood grain, right? Beautiful. But here's what you kind of need to notice. And if you don't notice, I'll call it out to you. You don't really see the texture anymore. You can certainly identify the texture if I hold it up and you tip it to the light, but visually, the texture seems to go away when you add color because we don't have that contrast. And that, again, is where Brayers come in. And I've used Brayers before. I think when I did some demos last year before these Brayers were available, I did use my squishier speedball Brayer. And so if you have that, you can certainly use it. But even then, I was telling people that with a soft brayer over a textured paper, you have to be careful because if you press too hard, it's going to get into the ridges. So I'm going to take this one that I already inked before. These are wood grain and leather. And I'm still going to do a little comparison demo. Okay, just because I want to. So I'm just going to start with a hard brayer just to show you how that's going to work. Let's take a little bit of... Take some weathered wood. So now I'm taking distressed paint. Could be any kind of acrylic paint. There you go. I don't know why my hand needs to be there for it to focus, but it does. All right, I'm going to shake that up. I'm going to flip this open. I'm going to put some paint down. Now when I use paint on a mat, again, this is how I do it. I know some people will put that down and brayer and brayer and brayer and spread it out, and that is too much work. I just take this, I do this to make it as long as this, and now you're off to the races, right? Because now I get to just go in and do coverage. So you can hear already how this brayer is going over this paint. You can also see that when I'm trying to put paint on this brayer, because it is hard, it's not wanting to cover. Now, even if I go a little bit lighter, you can still see the surface of this doesn't want to take a medium consistently, okay, just because of its nature. And if this was on paper, you could get it to roll more. But like I said, I wanted to do a distress brayer for how I like to use a brayer. It doesn't mean it's the best brayer in the world, and it doesn't mean every other brayer is not good. It's just for how I use it. And paint is one of the ways I use it. And this is something that would always frustrate me, because if I tried to go over a paper, you can see that it's very splotchy because it's not transferring the medium, okay? So let's move to another. I'm gonna set that over there. I have so many baby wipes, I gotta get them out of the way. Sorry, it kind of drove me crazy. All right, now we're gonna take the distress brayer. I'm gonna go back, I'm gonna add a little bit of paint. So this one is this is weathered wood, but you could do speckled egg. We could do a little bit of both. Just nothing more than a couple drops of paint. Just spread it out with your finger. I have a baby wipe off to the side, then it just comes off your hands really quickly. And now we're going to take this brayer. And so this one, I'm just going to start rolling through this. And you can see right away how it's going to coat the brayer, right? The paint is just going to want to go over the surface, which is great. That's the whole idea. And you want to coat your brayer, but you want to coat it just fairly even, if you will. All right? Once you do, we're just going to take this and we're going to roll it across. Now, this is that's the wood grain, slightly textured. And I'm just going to go and just start rolling it just really light. You don't need a lot of pressure. But once you get some of that paint on there, you can build up whatever intensity you want on your paper, and it's done. It's that quick. So it transfers that medium very, very quickly. If you didn't want that much paint on a surface, well, then when you're inking this up or getting paint on there, you can just go off to a clean area and you can just go back and forth into one spot and really work that paint down, because whenever you make pressure onto a brayer, it actually pushes medium off, right? So lightly is what's going to coat the brayer. Heavy is what's going to push it off. So this is a way that you can always get medium off of a brayer and still leave paint on your work surface. Instead of loading it up, rolling it off, let's say on a paper towel, then you're wasting your paint. Where here, if you're working on a non-stick mat, that's what this is. So the non-stick mat is here. It's still going to allow me to continuously use this paint palette. And that's why I like to use it when if you do gel printing or anything like that and you don't want to have a lot of paint down, utilize the space of this non-stick mat to do it. So we're going to go back to this one. And now that I've worked this paint in, you're going to see that on this side, and I'm going back and forth in the same area, you can see that it's applying like a lighter layer of paint than what we got here, right? See how different that is as far as how it lays it down? So there's no right or wrong, but this now allows me to control this, right? It's going to give me total ability to apply paint over even something that is like barely raised. I mean, you can tell it's not like an embossing folder is easier because it's got a really heavy innie and outie. But something textured like this, if you try to just go over that, say with a blending tool or your fingers, you have a tendency to push medium into that area. That is why I wanted this density, this material, this kind of rubber of a brayer. And I still have paint on here, right? So if I worked on another substrate, I could just keep going and going until there is no paint, because you can see that the paint is still on that roller. All right, so that's looking at it on wood grain. We're going to do cracked leather, but I want to change the color, so I'm just going to quickly wipe this off. Pretty simple. Put that back on, set it down, and get rid of that. Once the paint dries, does it seal the distress ink underneath? Well, it would seal what's under the paint, yes, but if there's no paint on the brown, then the distress is technically not sealed. If you want to seal distress ink, you would use distress microglaze, and that would seal the whole entire surface. But yes, under the paint, because paint is now waterproof, that is, but the brown underneath, no, that's still exposed. So you would need to use microglaze, and then you would seal the whole thing, and the whole thing would definitely be permanent and waterproof. All right, so that's wood grain. Yeah, the wood grain is awesome. It does come, I think it's an 8.5 by 11. I'm not sure if Ranger could answer that. It used to come in this size as well as large sheets, but I'm not sure if they still offer it in both. But take a look at that. Isn't that like, that's just so real. And it doesn't always have to be weathered wood, right? You could do wood grain that's darker. In fact, let me see if I have a piece here. I always have a drawer of stuff. There you go. There's a darker one, right? So if this one happens to be done in crayon, but crayon, you can see that I've got dark areas and light areas. But this is just showing you that if you put brown over the raised areas instead of light, you just get a different effect, right? So, and some people might like this little skippy bippy from the red one. Maybe that's your jam, but I really like the fact that it just gives me a little bit more control. Okay, so on to the leather. So the leather, I actually saw that like Stacy, one of the makers, Stacy created a beautiful leather, and she was using her finger with that. Because I remember when I saw one of her makes, I'm like, hey, how did you get the leather? She's like, oh, you put a little bit of paint on there and you just kind of lightly do that. And she showed me, and she did it perfectly, but my pork chop fingers just don't allow for that light application of color. And that was another reason why it was important to have a brayer that just gave me more control. So I'm going to put a little drop of antique linen paint. This is now cracked leather. I'm going to take that, spread it out with my finger. And there's not a lot of paint left on your finger. I just wipe it off because I don't want to have paint everywhere. And now I'm going to take my roller, same thing, just going to roll through it. But now I'm going to start pressing down, because what I want, remember what I told you before, if you apply pressure, you're going to get what? A lighter amount of paint. And that's what I want specifically for leather, is I want it to be much, much lighter, almost shadowy. And because this pattern is not linear like wood grain, it has all different peaks and valleys. I'm just lightly rolling and just moving my paper. And what that's doing is it's hitting those high points in just different areas. It's also putting a really cool texture in that paint. Flip it over, but take a look at that. See how that just really highlighted that texture? But it's super, super light because we know when we put paint down, we're not gobbing it on there, and we're rolling this back and forth many, many times and looking at the brayer. So while people really didn't prefer that it was black, and I don't know if people prefer it because no one's seen it until now, but I can imagine people go, I don't like it to be black because I can't see it. Well, on the contrary, because when you're using oxide and paint, you can see it. So I'm going to clean that up. Pretty easy, right, Stacey? Yeah, easier than me using my finger, because I was not good at that. I've never been good at just being kind of light-handed at anything. But the inspiration of really adding a little highlight made all the difference. And then you can take this and even take it to the next level by creating this shine. And I've seen this done many ways. I've seen it done with collage medium. I've seen it done with embossing. I'm going to use resist spray on this one. And I'm not sure. I think I've seen a lot of people. I've seen Ann Barnes do this. I've seen Tammy B do this. But it's really amazing how you can take cracked leather. You might like this soft look of it, this matte look. But if you love this shine, this really cool, almost like, I mean, this really looks like leather to me with that reflection. Here's what I'm going to do to get that. I'm going to still work on that painted piece. I'm going to go back to my splat box. I'm going to take another paper towel and I'm going to add a layer of resist spray. Like I said, there's many different ways to do it. I prefer resist spray because it gives me that wonderful sheen and it goes on quick. All right. So I'm just going to take my resist spray, spray this on, and you can see resist spray kind of comes out like, I don't know, purpley. Sometimes it comes out a little splotchy. This is one that when you're done, you need to unscrew the nozzle, run it under water, spray water through it, and then replace it, because otherwise, because this is a resist, it also kind of works as, it's very sticky, that it will clog up your nozzle. So that's just my advice. But for now, I'm just going to use a baby wipe to wipe that off. But after the demo, I just remove this and spray water through it. Okay, so you can see when I sprayed it on, it's kind of purpley in color. That's the whole purpose of resist spray, so you can see where you've sprayed it. That's why it has that tint, but it will dry completely clear. You can let it air dry, or we can go in and use our heat tool to dry it, because this is also perfect for drying glue and paint and collage medium and all sorts of things. Okay, there we go. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And it's interesting because you don't really see everything until it is done. Okay, if you put the brayer after using it on the leather on black paper, do you get the leather texture on it? You know, I tried that. I would imagine if you had a lot of paint, you would, but remember that paint went on super light, so there's really not as much contrast. You do get a faint impression because I did it with wood grain, but not like you would do if you actually, you know, really put a lot of paint on here and kind of rolled it over, say, a texture plate or a rubber stamp. That would be good if you had like a clean rubber stamp. You inked this up or painted it up and rolled over a clean rubber stamp to remove it. That would do it. But you kind of think that you would be able to transfer this texture, and well, it doesn't really work like that. I thought it would, but it didn't work well for me. You might have luck with it. So here is that paper now. You can see, and this is completely sealed. Resist spray also makes this waterproof. So if you were to collage on this or put it on the cover of a journal, this is completely sealed and smooth. Isn't that amazing? To go from white paper to magic right before your eyes. But see that little bit of paint? That matters, because that is what's allowing your eye to identify that leather texture, or for that matter, wood grain texture. And the wood grain, we could spray this as well and have kind of that veneered glossy wood, which would be pretty cool. Yeah, you know what? I've not done that. I'm going to do it because we can. So I don't think I've ever like glossied up wood grain that I remember. So I'm about to. We're going to see how it looks. My resist spray is almost out. You can tell it's like so out of juice. I have very little left. So you got to hold it upright. Okay, let's take this out. Ooh, I can tell already I'm going to like it. I'm going to like it. I'm going to like it. Do you have to dry resist spray? You do not. Is resist spray the same as water? I don't know. I don't know the question. Yeah, I don't think, I mean, no, because this is, well, one, it's used as a resist, but this is also drawing in that kind of shine, which is really good. Yeah, I agree with you, Shell. A what if moment, just like I said last week, if you're asking yourself 1 minute, what if, you should be doing it. I'm just that way. Because I can't, I mean, even though I'm live, I cannot get through a demo and do that. What will seal and give a matte finish? Collage medium or distressed microglaze. Distressed microglaze would be my first choice for a sealed matte finish, but you could also use matte distressed collage medium to seal it. Look at that. Ooh, that is beautiful right there. That's really good. I like that. And if you wanted to take the shine off of this or anything else, you could go over this now with some steel wool, and this would take away the shine but still leave that sealed look. But I prefer the shine in this. So anyway, that's good. I love that resist spray. It's pretty cool. Yeah, makes a big difference. Like, I mean, there's just our backgrounds. Like, look at how it even intensifies the color. Like, see how it just makes that rich color just that much more vivid? That's my new jam now, I think. I think everything will be resist spray. I kind of need resist spray in like one of those pump bug sprayers now. All right, very cool. Okay, now we're gonna get onto an embossing folder because I said I would, so I will. Embossing folders, they're great. They're amazing. And if you have a 3D folder, anything that has even deeper texture, perfect for inking. But you could do this on a traditional embossing folder as well. But a 3D embossing folder, well, that's pretty magical. So I'm going to go into and take my little sports car brayer. We're going to do a little comparison, just a side by side, just to show how oxides work on different brayers. Again, this isn't to show a right or a wrong, a good or a bad. This is just to show you the difference and why I wanted this kind of brayer. Okay. I don't know why I feel it's important to always say that, but I just do, because everyone has a different opinion. Okay. So here I'm going to take an oxide. This is evergreen bough again. It could have been any color, I suppose. Just going to pick this up on the brayer. And what I'm doing on my embossing folder is on your folder you have an innie and an outie. Okay, so when these are sandwiched together, that's where it pushes the paper up. I want to work on the side where my design is debossed or carved in to it so it has the most smooth area. That's what I want to do. Could you apply it to this area and stampen it? Yes, you could do either side, but for this technique, I'm working on the smooth side of the folder. Okay, so I'm just going to apply some oxide. We're just going to go right over the folder, and I'm just going to apply it just over the top there. Okay, and we can see that there's pretty good amount of ink left on that roller. Okay, I'm doing the same thing and I ink this up. Just want to make sure, and I'm always just kind of looking at the roller to make sure that it's coated. If for whatever reason you're like inking up a brayer and there's a spot that's not taking ink, usually it means something's on there. And it could be like the smallest little speck of embossing powder or paper fuzz, anything. So you might just want to clean that off if you see it. That's just something that's really important to kind of remember. So on this one, I'm doing the same thing, kind of rolling back and forth just to get my color down. And you can see that on here, I don't know if you're going to be able to notice it, but this put on the color, this started to lift the color off a little bit. But we're still going to emboss both of them, just to show you. I'm just going to take a piece of cardstock. Now, normally on 3D, you would spray the cardstock with water. You could do that. You're going to get a little reaction. For this one, I'm just going to go in dry. It's not going to give me as great of an embossing as it will if I were to miss the paper, but because I used ink, I'm just going to go in dry. I've got my Vagabond off to the side. Let me just run this through 3 times. I don't want to bring it into the camera. It's just a little bit of a pain, but I'm going to go in. There's one. And maybe I'll just do a couple of passes. There's 2. I always think 3D 3 times. Okay, 3rd time. So could you miss your paper? Yes. Could you even miss the backside that's not coming in contact with ink? Yes, you can. All right. So here's the thing to know about when you're putting on the ink. The area that is darker, that's where more ink is applied. The area that's lighter, that's where less ink is applied. And I think that the black rubber brayer just puts down more ink, a little bit more consistently, but both of them will work. It just depends on what you're going for. I wanted more of a concentration of color, and so that is why I love the black brayer. But isn't that great, just adding some oxide onto your embossing folder, onto the flat side, and then doing your embossing and transferring that. And now you're just going to clean this off just with a baby wipe. Pretty simple, just to take off any excess oxide. But that's another great use for a brayer, is the fact that you can go in and ink your folders and get that oxide. And you can do this with regular distress. I will say that regular distress doesn't like to lay down on the plastic as smooth as oxide does. The oxide goes on very smooth, very creamy. You can also do this with archival ink. Archival ink is another ink that you can use for that. So really nice. I think it's pretty. So just, again, another thing to do with a brayer. But there again, when it comes to oxide, I find that it transfers off this type of material a little bit better than this. This is much softer, and you can see that it stays quite a bit wetter. And I think that's just because of that type of ink. So there we go. Let me just clean this off. Take this off real quick and clean it. That embossing folder is called Botanical. It's a 3D embossing folder from Sizzix. It's quite nice, but again, you can try different embossing folders, try working with what you have, and just see if you like that technique. But it's quite, I think it's just a different use for a brayer. And I wanted to share that with you. I think even though this release may not be the biggest release, certainly they are tools that I find very necessary for a paper crafter, or a mixed media artist, having, that right kind of foam, because we want to do some blending. Now we have these minis and of course our Brayers. Let me just find these guys. There we go. I'll bring those in the package. Pretty nice. So that is a release.